that is enough of that. I've just been calling everyone out for their lack of professionalism, and then played the song when I was supposed to be talking.
Schoolboy.
Okay, good evening, welcome to Monday Night Football. Thank you for joining us, especially to those joining us live, even though we know you're only listening now because your other half's watching The Walking Dead and you can't stand to see her fawn over Daryl Dixon. Or really, is that just me? Alright, well, on the plus side, lads, at least we've just lost a big chunk of our audience who forgot it was Walking Dead night. So my name is Sam Meakin. As usual, I will be your host for proceedings this Monday night. Joining me from the green half of the city are Mikey Wilson and Connor Heaney, and from the maroon half, Sean Meakin and debutant Graham Smith. So let's get to it. Today saw former Hearts captain Stephen Presley relieved of his duties as manager of Coventry. He's a person who was pinpointed from very early in his career as a definite manager, and his relative lack of success has possibly been a bit of a surprise. So what I wanted to hear from you guys is a player from your club's past who you expected to be a managerial genius, but it never quite happened. Connor, do you want to start us off, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've possibly taken this question at slightly the wrong angle, but I mean, I did think that John Collins would have gone on to do a little more managerial wise after his time at Hibs. I mean, it was obviously a tumultuous year or so that he was with us, and I really thought that, you know, having a cup win under his belt, he would have gone on to maybe not better things, but at least continued the managerial career for a wee while longer. And I don't know whether it's ego or something else, or maybe just a bit of self-awareness that prevented him from doing that. Maybe he just decided that he wouldn't be very good at it, because he's kind of had a spotted career after that. I mean, obviously the Celtic assistant job was quite a big one, but before then it was just, you know, a job in Belgium, and then partnership with John Hughes, Livingston for a little while, and, you know, just bits and bobs. So,
I don't know if you read it, but I believe that the Daily Record got an exclusive interview with Michael Stewart where he spoke about
Stewart. Alright, well, what did he have to say?
Those news hounds.
Yeah, I wonder where they got that. They got a sniff of that. But so that he's one where I just when he left Hibs, I was expecting him to move on to a few different things, and it never really materialised. But I wonder if I just can sort of picture him cutting a sort of exceedingly ridiculous figure, you know, going from team to team and embarrassing himself. There was one player who I never expected to become a manager, and that's Martin Canning, who's now currently Premiership manager. You know, and just from hearing him speaking, he only played sort of 12 games for Hibs, but just from sort of remembering him, I never thought one day he's going to be managing in the SPL, and unfortunately he doesn't seem to be doing a brilliant job.
I was going to say, given Hamilton's start, we may not be able to say that about him for too much longer.
Yeah,
so at least it's topical, I suppose. Right, well, Connor's introduced a second question there. You can answer that one as well if you would like. An unlikely success story from your clubs. Mikey, let's stay on Hibs for now. What you got?
I suppose in our sort of time, maybe the most standout candidate would be Frank Sozzi. Had that great history as a player, he played with a great players, been surrounded by greatness at different times in his career, and seemed a great leader on the park, and it seemed like a lot of his teammates at the time gravitated towards him. A great guy in the dressing room, great character, but I think his time in charge showed he had a bit of a soft belly, and I think maybe the wrong group of players to step out from. I think there's probably strong characters, and it was obviously on a downward sort of scale at the time. So he'd be an obvious candidate.
The interesting thing on Sozzi as well is that, as far as I'm aware, he's never gone on to try it again either. He's never pursued it.
He's went to commentary.
So you do wonder if it's really even something that he wanted, or if it was just the set of circumstances was there and he thought, well why not?
Another one came to mind who I probably would be my real answer would be Stuart Liddell. I think when you see him on television, I don't always agree with what he says, but he speaks very intelligently about the game. He seems quite articulate, and even when there was a video or a DVD that came out a few years ago, like a sort of Hibs season review, and he filmed the whole thing and came across as quite an interesting, articulate guy. And again, quite a bit of a leader in the dressing room, was captain at Livingston. So I thought he'd go into a bit more involvement in the sort of coaching, management side of things.
And who's your, given Connor's extra question, who's your unexpected success story from Hibs?
Probably Michael O'Neill, because as a player, he just at times did not seem to care about being a footballer, and he was either absolutely phenomenal or an empty jersey, and just had this very easy attitude about him, and nothing ever struck me about him that it would say like this guy's going to be a manager, an international manager who's bagged himself a good few results recently as well. So Michael O'Neill would probably be my main one. I also kind of find out that Gareth Evans has sort of become a coach and is involved with Scotland just now, and he was like sort of the quietest, most timid man that's sort of ever played. But I think Michael O'Neill's probably for me the one that's gone on. I never really seen it coming.
Okay, interesting one. Sean, what are your thoughts on this from a Hearts perspective?
I think the one I never expected him to be a good manager, but certainly everyone to do with Hearts hoped he would be a good manager, was John Robertson. He done a good job at Inverness, bringing him up and whatnot, but the stars just never aligned for him when he was at Hearts. He never had the greatest team to work with, but he never showed that he was. I mean, he always seemed fairly tactically inept and wasn't capable of bringing in the changes that seemed really needed as the game went on.
Tommy Kerr, just to elaborate on that, Tommy Kerr mentioned on Facebook, mentioned John Robertson as well, and said he was excellent with Inverness Kelly, but the step up to Hearts was the wrong move for him. He was just far too emotionally attached to Hearts, and he genuinely believes that if he'd still be in management if he had joined another club that he didn't have that emotional attachment to. So that kind of goes along with your point a wee bit there, I think. Yeah,
most likely, especially coming in at the time he did, with what was going on behind the scenes and whatnot as well. I think if he had came into a Hearts team where we were in the position more like we are now, he would have had a better hand at it. But and on that other side of it, I think there's one who I expect. I'm going slightly different with this one.
Okay.
They've not had the number one job as of yet. Okay. But they're doing very well in a 2IC position at the moment, and we're expecting them. I certainly expected them back from their time at Hearts and every club they've been at since to definitely go into management, and that's Davy Weir. Davy Weir's doing a really good job just now. His future's undecided at the moment because you don't know whether or not he's going to stick around at the end of the season, considering the manager's already leaving.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was captain of pretty much every team he played for.
But he did have he could almost go into both questions here because he also had a really poor spell at Sheffield United.
He did.
And so he could, in theory, actually turn out to be another negative story.
Another quick one on that one I'm surprised who's never went into any coaching or management is Scott Severin. I always felt like he would gravitate towards that. However, after the triple leg break he suffered, he now works on the oil rigs.
That's an interesting one. I didn't know that. But especially, it's funny, what you bring up there is actually a telling point about careers ended by injury, because it's the story with so many managers is that their careers end early and they think they're presented with that lack of opportunities, really, and the obvious thing is, well, I'll start doing the youth coaching or whatever. And so many of the great managers did that and went on to have a successful career because they felt like they had more of a point to prove when they were managers, whereas guys who were successful players and played until, that's maybe what stands against Davy Weir as well, is that he stopped when he was 41. Robbie Nielsen's like 34 and is managing a team at a decent level and gaining loads of experience. Davy Weir was still just worrying about turning up on a Saturday. It's not really the same thing.
Well, it worked for Stuart on the Renford Rejects back in the day, so you might be onto something there.
But he had Bruno de Grady at his disposal, so that's a different story. Right, let's move on to our debutant, Graham Smith.
Hi guys.
First and foremost, you were telling a story just before we came on air about a tattoo that you got when you were 18. Now, This is slightly unorthodox. I just getting to know you and all that kind of stuff. What's the tattoo you got, Graham? Are you allowed to say? Or
It's how to describe it. It's I imagine it's a love heart with a skull on top of the heart, with wings coming out the side of the heart, with a star in the middle of the wings. So can you guess which wrestler I'm talking about?
Sean, do you want to go?
It's definitely Bret Hart. They're the Hitman.
Are we allowed to ask what part of your body it's on?
No.
Okay, we'll have to draw the line somewhere. That makes sense. Okay, Graham, what have you got for us in terms of managerial lack of success stories?
Well, the two choices I came up with have just been already covered. David Weir and John Robertson. Yeah. No, again, it's just reiterating your point. Davy Weir was captain of basically every club, and he was even Scotland captain for a wee while. So when I heard that he was going into management, I thought, yeah, this guy's going to be a future star. He really is. He's got all the credentials. But one of the Hearts players, former captains, leaders on the pitch that I knew of, and he was a hero throughout the 80s and 90s, was John Cahoon. And he was a player that after he retired didn't go into coaching in any way, shape or form. He became a football agent. And it's quite rare to find legendary players like that not wishing to go into any coaching capacity.
Now, this is maybe the Jambo in me coming over, but I've always looked at John Cahoon as being the likeable Pat Nevin. He's that guy who he likes a wee bit NME and stuff, but he's got his agency and he did a wee bit punditry work back in the day.
Pat Nevin's not likeable.
He'll write
because he's got Hibs leaning towards him.
It's nothing to do with the Hibs leaning. It's many other things. But that's just a personal preference. I'm not implying anything there at all. But yeah, John Cahoon always seemed a wee bit too cosmopolitan to get tied down into football management. I think maybe that's what it was.
I also think that maybe half the listenership might find it very difficult to think of John Cahoon as likeable.
Possibly,
very, very difficult.
Possibly, but he got into some.
Even for penalties.
He got into some weird things. John Cahoon, I believe he had held a position at Edinburgh University for a number of years and stuff. It was a wee bit. It was certainly an odd career path for a former footballer to go into, especially like a 80s, 90s footballer. There wasn't really a level of intelligence implied at that stage. I have to say.
Did you hear that Ross Kemp? He was the rector at Glasgow Uni for some reason.
Well, to be fair, Grant Mitchell and Glasgow Uni do kind of go hand in hand to an extent. Okay, my one was slightly obvious on what we're saying in terms of being an intelligent guy, and I know he is involved in football now at arguably a much higher level than either of the Edinburgh clubs at the moment, but Takis Fisas, I think everyone would just that, the same way when we had Paulo Sergio in the dugout at Hearts, that everyone looked, and even when he was making sometimes baffling decisions on the park, you still thought, cool though, like when he sits in a press conference, like, we're glad that he's representing us, because he just seems like the part. Takis Fisas was always like that, just an intelligent guy, spoke about a million different languages, and you just thought he could walk into any dressing room and think, he's our guy, like, I will get behind him. So he would be the one that I would love to see come back at some point and step into management, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
Where is he now?
I believe he held a position in the Greek FA for a long time. He was like technical director. He was like overseeing the national team.
He was overseeing a lot of the youth squads for coming forward as well, and advising on who should be moving up through the system,
which is the position to get in if you can, because it's a lot more stable, shall we say, than football management.
Yeah, although the financial system in Greece
that is
always
true,
that stable. But no, he is a very, very nice man. Also, I stumbled upon him when he was at Tynecastle a couple of weeks ago, and he gave me a nice big hug.
But you're right,
maybe because I was wearing a big furry suit, but even still,
you're right. Based on the fact that the Greek financial system is a bit of a nightmare, we might see him pop up like managing Trinent Juniors in 3 weeks or something. Like, I need something. Okay, right. We're going to go a couple of adverts, and then we will come back for some serious football chat. We will discuss the weekend's victories for both Edinburgh clubs, and we've got a wee squad rotation chat to close with tonight. So stay tuned to Monday Night Football on Radio Salta. Right, because we have a level of professionalism to keep up, we're back on Monday Night Football. Which team do we want to talk about? When I said level of professionalism, I mean low level of professionalism. Normally people would have decided this before they go on air, but we're
Mikey, me and you, rock paper scissors. Let's go for it.
Okay. This is like
1, 2, 3, go.
This is like the New Age Outlaws deciding.
Hibs first then.
Hibs. There we go. Right, that's the best way to decide that.
That's the most democratic way to go for it.
We tried to start with coin tosses at first, but it didn't really occur to me when the show first came on air that only one person's really involved in a coin toss. It's not really a two-sided competition, actually. I mean, it literally is two-sided, but not in terms of input. Okay, let's go on to the Hibs game then. Hibernian 3, Dumbarton 0. We are going to leave the management discussion for now, because we're going to come on to that later. So in terms of the personnel decisions and the tactical decisions. But for now, what I want to talk about is the way the team performed and who were the standouts. Let's work from the front back, because the strikers, at least on the headline news, had the most impact. We saw a new striking partnership in the JJ, however we're going with it, and Malonga. Connor, how did you think they fared?
I thought that was a really good partnership. I think they sort of they balanced each other out quite well. The JJ looks like he's going to be a really great addition to the squad. It's the first time I'd seen him play properly. I think it's his first 90 minutes, so it's the first time I'd seen him in the flesh. And I think he had a really great performance. He's quite a strong player. Gets into good space, hassles defenders, holds his line well, and generally sort of made a nuisance of himself. I should say that the majority of anything we say about Hibs players this week should be sort of counteracted by the fact that Dumbarton downed tools after about 10 minutes, so it was a bit like watching an exhibition match. I mean, our players were getting a lot of space and a lot of possession, so it's possibly not reflective of how we're going to perform throughout the wider season. But that partnership was really good, because I think the Hibs fans are starting to warm to Malonga a lot more now. We're starting to sort of understand his personality and the sort of nuances of his play a lot better than we did to begin with. I think a lot of people found him incredibly frustrating the first few games he played for us, but I think now we can see what he's about, and it just seems to be that kind of that laconic personality. But he's a very clever player, and that was balanced out very well with the JJ, who had a completely different approach.
Is with Malonga, is it that difference between being lazy and conserving your energy, so to speak?
I don't even know if it's that. It's just like he's got such a languid style, and often, like a couple of times I've seen this, so it can't just be coincidence. A defender will come at him and it'll look like he's almost given up, and the defender will back off because it looks like he's sort of just like, and then he'll pounce again and run off, and that's happened a few times, so it's quite clever, sort of calling the bluff of the opposition, because just from his whole sort of demeanour you'd assume he was just a lazy guy, but throughout the game he was getting himself into some really dangerous positions. So I think the fans are starting to understand that he's actually, there are some nuances to his play, and that seems to be something that's going to work well with a player like the JJ, maybe more so than other strikers that he's played with in the team.
Mikey, do you see that pair as a pair, or was that just to get them both on the park because they're both in need of games to get back up to speed?
I think the priority would be to get them both in the park, especially JJ, to get them some match time. Malonga to come back in the fold after the African Cup of Nations. But I think that Conor alluded to the fact that their styles are quite complementary. Malonga does have a slightly unusual style of play, whereas JJ, I like the fact that he wasn't remotely intimidated by any kind of physical nature of the game. He's not particularly tall, but he's quite stout, really good in the air, superb in the air, wins a lot of flick-ons and sort of wins his physical battles. Really busy, does a lot of the busy, like the chasing and harrying that Cummings did, but I don't think there was any fear at any point that he was going to make a sort of stupid tackle or anything. But his all-round play was really good, and I think the things that they seem to do well on a very kind of early sort of viewpoint of JJ is that they do have quite sort of complementary styles, and it could be that I think JJ may be the best partner possibly for different strikers we've got. I think he played quite well off El Algui as well. Touching on what Connor said as well about Malonga, I think that it's certainly a style of play that gets this lazy tag. I'm pretty sure if we got a sort of Carragher Neville style heat map, you find him out in the wide areas a lot. He's always floating out there, and if he's a really lazy guy, he'd be standing in the penalty spot all day long. So I like the way that he links up the play wide, and he creates space for the midfield players to get into the box alongside the second striker. I think the two of them, there's definitely promise for them to look really good going forward for the rest of the season, especially as they get more used to playing with each other and JJ gets a bit more match fitness.
Okay, before we move on from the strikers, then let's talk about the goals. Each of them in their own way kind of seemed like a comedy of errors from a defensive standpoint, but Hibs there capitalise on it. How pleasing was that, Connor, that, like we say, they were a bit chaotic from a defensive standpoint, but there was perseverance shown by the strikers and a bit of a killer instinct when it was required as well?
No, absolutely. I mean, those were three chances out of quite a lot. It was sort of 3-0 going on 5-0 at least. So it was inevitable that a few of them were going to go in. I think especially sort of Malonga's header, that was a particularly well crafted goal, and I think that he's as we said, he's a quite intelligent player, finding the right space. A couple of the other goals were down to defensive blunders by Dumbarton, but the fact that we've got players there that will pounce on those mistakes and make the most of them. I think DJJ as well. I think he's finding that he maybe won't get as much time on the ball as he likes in the box, and Dumbarton weren't exactly pressing us on Saturday, but I think in general he's used to sort of having a little bit more time, and he's starting to sort of get used to this sort of Scottish style now. So I think that was a good 90 minutes for him just to sort of weigh up what kind of opportunities he's going to have.
Okay, let's work our way back then. We saw a different four in the midfield, Mikey. We saw Fraser Fivey come in to start and Danny Handling return from the wilderness, given Scott Allen's recent illness. How did you think that four of Robertson, Handling, McGeoch and Fivey shaped up?
Again, touching on the sort of quality of the opposition and the way that they played, we have to kind of temper our review of them, but Fivey looked particularly excellent.
Well tempered. He looked incredible.
Your professionalism, Sam, as always. He put in a really good performance. A lot of driving runs. His passing and his inventiveness was surprising. I didn't remember him as that kind of player. He combined a lot of the qualities that Scott Roberts has been shown recently with that sort of will to get in the box with a wee touch of sort of McGeoch and Allen thrown in. That he found a lot of nice passes, and he was getting the ball out wide but continuing his run at the penalty box. So I was really impressed with him. Handling, reading sort of mixed reviews of his performance, he certainly didn't play badly in the slightest. I think we're still yet to see what kind of player he's going to become, but he liked to play it up nicely. He was combining quite well with the three other midfield players, the full-backs and the two strikers. So he did sort of provide a good option when the ball had gone into the front players and wanted somebody to play off. But at the same time didn't do anything particularly outstanding. But I think that he's got to take these opportunities when they come to him just now, because he doesn't come in a game like Saturday where, given after 10-15 minutes it was quite clear that Dumbarton weren't going to put up any sort of fight. He really should have been looking to take an opportunity to do something quite stand out. He didn't take that opportunity, unfortunately, but certainly didn't play badly, but I think that he would probably have hoped to have done a lot more.
I think with Handling, I think it was a deliberate choice by Stubbs to put him at the tip of the diamond, because he had to get involved a lot more than he normally would. And to be fair to him, he was involved in quite a lot of moves, and he did have a few shots, most of which went over the bar, which I think might be an example of him trying slightly too hard, which we've seen in the past with Cummings earlier in the season. Maybe trying a bit too hard to seize his opportunity. But I think at the tip of the diamond, I think Stubbs had basically said to him, "Show me what you can do." And I think he did have a good game. He's starting to turn into a bit of a scapegoat for Hibs fans at the minute, which is a shame, because we don't want to throw our young players under the bus yet again. He's definitely quite a way down the pecking order in terms of midfielders, but I think he does show a lot of promise. And there was a particular moment where he tracked back to cancel out one of Dumbarton's very fleeting attempts at attack. Tracked back, made a great tackle, and was sort of congratulated by Liam Fontaine for his efforts. And it's that kind of thing that we're seeing a lot more of him. Earlier criticisms of the season have been that he just sort of fades out of games and drifts it, and you forget he's playing for a while, which definitely, no matter what criticisms you have of his game on Saturday, you couldn't say that he wasn't involved, because he even watching the highlights, he was involved in most of the moves leading up to either the chances or the goals.
It is a difficult one for Handling at the moment, though, to come into that position, especially because he's replacing Scott Allen. Not necessarily because Scott Allen is different class every single game, but even when Scott Allen has a bad game, he tends to come up with 2 or 3 moments that could potentially lead to goals. Whereas, as you say, Handling's kind of a wee bit more of like a sensible player. Like, he'll get involved in the neat and tidy stuff, but he's not. You don't necessarily feel like he's one pass away from conjuring up a goal every time he's on the ball, whereas Allen can do that, and I think maybe it's suffering in comparison because it does feel like a step down.
Yeah, well, people were criticising for he always takes the easy pass. He always takes the 3-yard pass, and that's not the worst thing in the world for a midfielder. I think as Mikey was touching on, I think Fraser Vivey's style of play complements Scott Arns quite well, because he works really hard, and he's not looking for that killer pass quite as often. He's more looking for sort of the most functional pass, or if a mistake's made, he chases it down afterwards. So in midfield just now, we do have quite a strong pecking order in handling. I think he will get an opportunity in games to come to sort of just cement his place in the team, but it is hard to know where he fits in, surrounded by such other talents.
Five is an interesting one from an outsider's perspective, because I think the perception of him until now had always been that he's more of an attacking player, maybe plays from the wing. Is he slotting into that the more withdrawn positions in that diamond? I think maybe when he came in, a lot of people expected him to be vying for that number 10 position, but just now he's playing deeper in the midfield. How's he settling into that position?
I think that what I remember of him was that he certainly wasn't a holding midfielder or that 10, that creative sort of tricky guy. I thought he was kind of quite a bit of a workhorse in the midfield, but he seems to be slotting in really nicely. Again, it's still early on. He's getting his match fitness back and his sharpness back, so it'll probably be maybe 2 or 3 matches, especially if he's in that first pick 4, to see what role he takes up when it's Alan McGee at 5 and Robertson, assuming that's the 4 that we're kind of preferring. It'll be curious to see, especially against different types of opposition, the different types of role they'll take on. I think they had a relative amount of freedom that they could all sort of take a turn at being a 10, not having to worry too much about the shape of the discipline too much, but I think that he's certainly slotted in so far nicely. He's contributed at Ibrox and a good result, so the future for the rest of the season looks really good. I assume he's only going to get better and better.
Okay. I'm not going to talk about the defence from a defensive perspective at all, because there is next to nothing to talk about.
I think me and Connor probably could have kept fucking cheats, to be honest.
But I did want to mention Keith Watson, because he did show, at least in an attacking perspective, that he can bring at least some of what David Gray brings to the table as well. He obviously he played a part in most of Hibs' attacks, but he certainly put in a good cross for Malonga's header. How did you see his performance overall, Connor?
No, I thought he was really impressive, and again, he's another player which I hadn't seen a full 90 minutes from yet, and he'd been getting mixed reviews to begin with, but by all means, I think the way he played was quite similar to David Gray's, actually. I mean, again, given the opposition, he was attacking quite hard, and he was involved in a lot of the action, pressing up the field. Some of his crossing was fantastic. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of confused as to why Dundee United let him go, to be honest, because Dundee United are not exactly got a strong defence at the minute, and he seems like quite a strong candidate for that role, and you'd be tempted for Hibs to maybe try and keep him on at the end of the season if at all possible, because he's a fantastic backup for David Gray. My
understanding is that it was partly down to him looking elsewhere in the summer, and then obviously the opportunity to get Ryan McGowan came up, and that was going to be a longer term option, so it became a kind of obvious swap deal for them. But certainly I think it maybe just is a change of scenery required for Watson, and then he can go again. Even if it is only for a few months, I mean, he's been a fantastic addition, or it looks like he will be from now on, because the last 2 games has been great. And it was a position that needed cover as well.
He can play across the back 4 as well, which is...
We saw that at Ibrox, obviously, him slot into centre half, which was someone new.
With Booth leaving, we needed somebody who we know could possibly step into left back, and like Hanlon can play left back, but if we don't want to play around with the centre halves, then I think Watson went across the left back during the second half, and Stevenson went off and Gray came on, so he can do that job quite again against a dubious amount of test on Saturday, but he can certainly fill in that position, so he gives us options. And like I say, he played centre half, played really well against Rangers, so I'd like to have him the rest of the season. If things go well this season, we might have a little bit of card to play and convince him he might want to stay around.
Perfect. Well, let's move on to the Hearts result of the weekend then. 2-1 win away at Queen of the South. Graham, let's go to you first. In general terms, we spoke last week about how this game seemed, of the remaining games up until that final run of games against Hibs and Rangers, this seemed like the real stick out, the awkward tie. How big a psychological blow to our challengers was it to win this one?
I think it was so much of a confidence boost for us rather than a demoralising effect on our rivals. I think since Queen of the South have only lost twice at Palmerston all season to Hibs and Cowdenbeath, I think. I think that gives the Hearts players, after a few questionable performances against Livingston, I think that gives them a massive boost, and I think it was probably one of the biggest games of the season, actually. I mean, I know you're saying it's one of the biggest games from now until the run-in, but I think it's enormous, actually. I mean, I was very uncertain about the game. I actually thought that a draw would have been a fair result. The way we've been playing, the way Queens are playing at home, I thought a draw would have been okay, but I wasn't at the game. I was watching the live feed on Betfair. I think it's an amazing game, and I think it's put the title to bed, even though Robbie will not say that.
For sure,
that is the bravado that the other guys haven't really been able to embrace quite yet, because it's been tempered by having these guys sit next to them. But okay, Sean, as we say, hugely important win, but also quite an unorthodox one for Hearts, because this season, at least, except from against Hibs, Hearts don't really go behind.
No.
When we went behind after 24 minutes, what was your thinking? Sheer panic?
Yeah, I didn't think I can really say what I was thinking at the time on air, but it was one of those, right, here we go, this is the huge test. Here's where we put down a marker and why we are going to be the champions this year. If we want to be the champions, then we need to dig out results like this. And you saw it, the first half was a really open, even game. Second half, we really seemed to nullify what threats they had, like Derek Lyle, the human Kendall, very rarely managed to get on the ball. Just on that point, Google Derek Lyle and look at pictures of him. It's ridiculous. Just for men here and the whitest teeth you've ever seen in your life. It was scary. It was scary. Don't look directly at him though, he might burn your retinas with the teeth. He barely touched the ball in the second half. They couldn't get the ball into his feet for him to feed it on to anyone else. If a lot of the players seemed to step up their game in the second half. Once again, Miguel Gallardo had an outstanding game. Just reads the play so well. He doesn't even need to make the tackles, because he's there a split second before the tackle needs to be made, and he's just walking away with the ball.
Gallardo's really interesting because as we've spoken about a lot, there is a negative element in all football supporters, but especially in the Hearts support at the moment, it's noticeable, because what have you got to be negative about in general terms? And it does rank away a wee bit more. But even the negative elements that we are standing at the game on Saturday, and you straight away you notice the pockets of negativity in the stands, and even them, when Gallardo gets it, it's like, Gallardo though, Walker, get on your way. Oh, Gallardo's brilliant. It's an odd situation. Just to stay on him for a moment, Scott has messaged us to ask a couple of questions, and one of the questions he wanted to ask is, where does Gallardo rank amongst other sitting midfielders of the past 25 years? I don't know why he's drawn the line at 25 years, but
Scott, I'm 24.
Well, let's go with our lifetimes to an extent then. Graham, for you, how good is Miguel Gallardo in the scale of past Hearts midfielders?
He's just classy. He's so classy. I mean, I remember the most outstanding holding midfielder that I think I've seen has been Julian Brillier, and I think Gallardo's the technique is a little bit better. He's more relaxed, I think, and he's just the thing is, he plays, and it's almost as if he knows he's that good, and he knows he's classy, and future star, real star. Yeah.
He's not had as many players stretchered off yet, though. So
No, he's not-
that's
he's-
something to live up for.
He's not broken anyone's legs yet.
No, yet.
He's not quite
First time.
he's not the bruising midfielder though. It's an interesting one though, because when Payardo first came in, and I think he made his first appearance actually at Palmerston against Queen of the South. He came on with about 15-20 minutes to go in the 3-0 win there, and we at the time it was that thing of, he's not very big, he's not very strong, he doesn't look very fast, he doesn't really know how to shoot. Like, what is it? Why did he get a game in La Liga? And now you see that it's like everything else that doesn't stand out straight away, he's great at. Like all the neat and tidy stuff and just reading the game and getting his foot in when you wouldn't expect it and those kind of things.
That's why you were marking Iniesta last year. All right, okay.
Exactly.
Why do you think he was dropped for the Falkirk game? It's the game that we lost at Tynecastle. Why do you think he didn't make that game?
It's an interesting question. I think probably, and it is an argument that still comes up in terms of why we've been struggling lately. There is a question about, does he disrupt the flow between Buabin and Gomez? And that potentially a legitimate argument, but you can't drop your best player because he affects two others who at the moment aren't performing to the same level as him. On the subject of dropping your best player, Hearts went with a 4-3-3 at the weekend, which is a new formation that we've seen really utilising two wingers. It went a bit 4-2-3-1 at times. Buabin pushed on, and
We're back to the numbers, guys. Stick it out again.
and Buabin actually got a wee bit isolated when he tried to play as the attacking midfielder, which I think is why we changed pretty sharpish
And changed it very well, might I add. Kenny Anderson looked a lot more comfortable in his number 10 position as opposed to when he's played more central previously.
Scott has brought up a point though about one of our informed players, Jamie Walker, and that he feels when we play with two wingers it doesn't necessarily suit Walker because he likes to play in field all the time. If Nielsen wants to go with a 4-3-3 with two wingers, does he have to sacrifice Walker no matter how good Walker has been, Sean?
I don't know. I think that was definitely a telling factor in the first half, that it was so tight and the fullbacks weren't getting to push on as much. So especially when Walker was coming in off the left hand side, and I've said it so many times this season, the natural width that our fullbacks and even the Hibs fullbacks can provide for their teams is massive when there's people cutting in. But because they couldn't get forward, it was Billy King was coming inside, Jamie Walker was coming inside. We've got three men in the middle and no one coming down the outsides. It really was a problem area, but I mean, you saw it for the second goal when Adam Eckersley could get bombing down the left hand side and put in the cross. It's not the greatest finish ever, but it doesn't matter. It's crossed the line and that's all we needed. So I think it depends on who we're up against and how well they are combating against our fullbacks pushing on. Definitely, I think even with that lineup though, there's enough diversity in there that if it's not working right, well, we can change the formation. And how do we use Walker in a more central role, and how can we create the width from other players? So there's enough there to change it up if need be.
Okay, and we will get onto that in our next discussion to come in about 5 minutes. On Hearts then, let's talk about the goals, because for what was quite an exciting and open game and a lot of decent football played and really back and forth, the goals were weirdly mundane. There was some good football displayed, but it was pretty basic, kind of get a full back, hit the byline, square it, you'll score. Even Queen of the South's goal was exactly that as well. How much was that effective football from the team scoring the goals, and how much of it was defences being exposed by fairly basic tactics, Graham?
I think it was just a classic example of just a team grinding it out and doing whatever it is to win. And the goal that Hearts conceded, it was a Queen's player just walked right through them. It was a simple goal. I think Billy King's goal was well taken. It's well taken. I think it was, Callum Parsons getting a couple of pelters recently, but I think he did well to find Billy King in the box. But yeah, the winner was, I don't even know if it can claim that. I don't know.
It's on target.
It's on target.
He's getting it.
There was a long.
You're not taking that away from him.
There was a long debate on the train home about that, especially with people who had it on at the bookies.
I'm just
like last goal scorer.
I'm saying he gets it because it's a brave man who goes up to Zayfouk and says, "Nah, that was an OG." Oh, really?
I believe that one of the bookies managed to not pay out on own goal or Zayfouk last goal. So I don't know how they managed that, but fair play to them. Okay, right, let's wrap up on Hearts then. Was there any other particular performers that we feel needed to be singled out from the weekend?
I think on that point there with Callum Patterson, he never had a bad game by any means. I think it's more just he's not playing as pivotal a part as he has done earlier in the season. He's still getting there. The amount of headers the guy wins is ridiculous. So he's doing a solid job. He's just not providing or getting the plaudits he did earlier in the season. He's not doing those specific things that you're remembering at the end of the game. So once again, for him to almost be a kind of boo boy at the moment for not living up to the high standard he set previously, but by no means being the worst player on the park, is a strange one. But Billy King again took his goal well. It's good confidence wise. I definitely could have saw last season or that coming off the outside of his foot or going past the post or something. So that's another good one for the confidence. We just need Sam Nicholson to step up now as well.
Okay, final question on Hearts, and I'm going to open it up to the whole panel because Scott's kind of taken the pin out the hand grenade and lobbed it in here and got as far away as possible. His question, I'm actually going to start with the Hibbies first on this. Are Hearts getting the praise that they deserve specifically for the levels of consistency?
Yeah, I think so. I think most Hibs fans are prepared to admit that fair play. You've done well this year, and I think from the press, and I've not seen anyone criticise Hearts at all. To be honest, apart from their own fans. But I guess I just mostly hear from you guys who are trying to be balanced, trying to add a new dimension to the way you talk about the team. But in general, most fans of other clubs, Hibs fans included, are quite happy to say that Hearts have done a good job this year and everything's gone to plan. And I think because we've got our own sort of our own battle to win, we don't sort of begrudge that too much at the minute, because it could well be both teams heading in the right direction.
I think there is a wee, and it can always, these things with fans' perceptions can always come down to a bit of a chip on the shoulder, but there is a wee thing I think amongst Hearts fans just now that they look at it in terms of the media portrayal of where we are in the league at the moment and stuff, and they think, well, one, it would be different if Rangers were this clear. It would be, well, we all said this, and because Hearts are slightly proving people wrong, they don't want to shout quite as loudly about it. But also there's just the thing of everyone had built this up as being a blockbuster. This is going to be a three-way battle and all that, and now actually we've kind of spoiled it a bit for everyone. And
sorry guys,
but there is that thing of everyone expected box office here, and they've not really got it. And in actual fact, I think some Jambos are looking at that and thinking we're not getting credit, because actually they're looking at it saying, but you've just made it really boring.
Well, it's just not a story anymore, is it?
No,
they're kind of, these are certainly, well, you're running away with it, but you're not extending the league just now, but there's not any sort of scope at the moment where it's going to fall apart, which, let's not pretend we're not kind of hoping that was going to happen, but it's not going to happen now. I think that Hearts were getting a hell of a lot of praise at the start of the season for steamrolling teams.
Yeah.
Rightly so, they were putting some big scores up. So
it is easy to praise a team when they're winning 4
exactly.
or 5-1. It's more difficult when they're winning 1-0 and 3-2 here and there, but it is equally as praiseworthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's been any, like Connor said, there's been any negative press about the way that Hearts have been winning. I don't know if Scottish is lacking a bit of love just now. Which one's a cuddle for everybody.
I think when Hibs fans see that winning goal on Saturday and that Zayfouk goal, you just go, oh come on, what a jammy bunch.
Yeah, but the problem there is that Hibs haven't seen the 40 minutes prior to that where Hearts were just battering on the door the entire time. And it's the same thing if you say the Malonga, the third goal, had been the winner against Dumbarton, we would look at the exact same and say, oh, deflection and Dumbarton and all over the shop and that. It's like we say, it's just fans' perception.
I'm not sure how much praise you can really demand for a 2-1 victory against Queen of the South late in the game. Really, like it's job done. It was the result that really should have been expected of a team 20 points ahead of everybody else. So.
I know what you mean, but you could say in the same sense that, well, that's the second time we've gone there and won, and neither of Rangers and Hibs have been able to achieve that, and that's not necessarily been pinpointed. But again, it is the thing of, why do you need everyone else praising you if you can look at the league table and see you're 20 points clear? Surely that's a big enough pat on the back. Graham, is it a big enough pat on the back? Are you bothered about getting praise from other people?
No. No, not really. I think where we are, we're kind of there on merit, and I think that fans know it. I mean, yes, it was past couple of games, performances maybe not been perfect. Fans have had a lot to compare with start of the season. And it was kind of jittery. I was at the Livingston game. It was very jittery. The Livingston game at Tynecastle. It was very, very jittery. But no, I think we are getting. I think we are getting the praise. I mean, back to Pat Nevin, what he was saying when he was giving us praise for grinding it out. And I think teams do deserve credit for grinding it out, because you get what you deserve in football. If you put the ball in the back of the net more times than the opposition, that you deserve to win the football match. Doesn't matter if you've been outplayed for 90 minutes.
Okay, right, we're going to wrap up on both Hearts and Hibs from the weekend there then. We will come back, we'll do a short preview of the weekend to come, and then we will go on our wee squad rotation chat for 10-15 minutes, because I want to know from you guys who your key players are for the run-in and how you would manage them if you are either Robbie Neilson or Alan Stubbs. And we're back on Monday Night Football. That was an advert for the Children of the Corn or something, I believe.
It was a bit like our giggling while the advert was going on.
That's true, aye. Okay, right.
Giggling buffoon.
And that's a Hibs.net classic. Well, at least they didn't like me on there like they like you on Kickbag, Mikey. Let's move on to the quick preview of the weekend. Hibs are away to Alloa on Saturday. Guys, what do we think? What are your score predictions?
I think this should be another easy one. I mean, I was at the last Alloa game away where we lost, and that was back in August, and that may as well have been a different season from the amount that's changed since then. That was the game that El Alagui got injured in, and we were worried about a backup striker because we only had Paul Heffernan, really.
It's mad to think it was that long ago that El Alagui went out.
It's funny, it was a long time ago. I mean, the team was so different then, which, we're probably going to talk about later, but by the time he comes back, it's going to be a completely different squad, because even at that point, Cummings hadn't really started. He'd had a few good games, but he wasn't quite our top striker yet. So that was way back in August. I think things will be much different now. I think this fixture and the two fixtures after it, we're playing the bottom three clubs, and I think 9 points are pretty much guaranteed. The way we've been playing recently, this could be a chance for Stubbs to implement a few more of his sort of alterations to the team, just trying out these players that maybe aren't first pick. And I think Alloa should. I mean, I think at this time of year as well, not just that we've improved so much, but the part-time teams are starting to sort of revert to the mean a little bit and fall away a bit. Yeah. Sort of they're not performing to their best. So I think that plays in our advantage as well. So yeah, I'm going to go for 2-0 Hibs for next week.
Okay, Mikey, the artificial surfaces, it's a topic that's come up time and time again this season, across, all across the media, not just on this show. But in general terms, I think most of the time we've found it put to bed. It actually doesn't make a difference. However, from a fan's perspective, the one ground that I've gone to where I felt it did genuinely play a part in the game was Alloa, because, as we've joked about on the show, theirs is about 8 years old. And as we saw against Rangers, they aren't necessarily against the old, well, let's put 3 times the amount of rubber pellets on and slow the game down. Is there any concern about this pitch? Because, as Connor says as well, we saw what it did to El Alagui early in the season.
Of course, you've got to bear in mind that it could be a factor in what kind of style you need to adopt to play the game. But with the personnel we've got, with the confidence that's going through the side just now, through more than just a starting 11 as well, there's other guys contributing to positive results. So I think that they're not unused to playing on these kind of surfaces. Each one's kind of got its own wee kind of sort of personality and quirks to it, but it's a flat surface. It's relatively light grass. Like they know what to do on the park, and they know how to play the game. So I think that we'll still get the job done. Whichever, if they decide to get more of these black pellets in the park and slow it down, then so be it. I don't think that like our style of play is particularly focused on playing with pace, because we've got loads of it in the team, and it's a flat surface. I think it'll be quite true, so it'll suit like say kind of build up play and combinations and stuff, so I don't think it should negatively impact on it. I think the fact we lost that game early in the season was because the team is still not settled and there was no confidence. I think it's the complete opposite now. So I was going to go 2-0 as well.
Okay, straightforward one for Hibs then. Is it the same for Hearts against Cowdenbeath for you, Graham?
Yeah, I'd say 2-0 as well. Yeah, at home, confidence boost after the weekends. Yeah, 2-0 I think. It's a comfortable performance as well.
Sean?
You'd be hopeful, especially coming off it was a positive win to come back in the way we did. I'll be interested to see what formation we go with and the personnel that's on the pitch if Robbie continues to rotate and possibly give other people opportunities. But you would hope that it would be not even necessarily convincing. I'm not saying it's going to be 4 or 5, but easily 2-0 it should be. Even if we concede, there should be 2 goals in this for the Hearts.
And does Colin Nish hold any fear for the Jambos in the room?
Who? Aye, for the Jambos.
Okay. Right. Well, Sean's points there lead us on to the larger discussion that we're going to have. No too large, because it's 11 o'clock already, and we'd like to be rounded up for maybe 1:15. But yeah, what we're starting to see now that we've touched on there as well, Hibs have really strengthened their squad over the last few months, almost to the point where it's unrecognisable from the team that started this season, at least in terms of the variety of options that are available to Alan Stubbs. Maybe not all as good as each other, not necessarily straight replacements in terms of quality. You could say the same in the Hearts squad, but at least viable options for different systems and different personnel, horses for courses, so to speak, as the season goes on. What I want to know from you guys is which players you pinpoint with which important games in the season that you would maybe see them rested before, or so that they can peak at those periods. How would you manage the important players in the squad through to the end of the season? Given that we've kind of been going to and fro the whole show, let's stay on Hibs for this. Who would you put in that key player bracket that you would have to actively manage towards the end of the season, and how would you do it?
I think Stubbs has got a few players that he's going to need to nurture slightly in terms of personality wise. He seems to have a good grip of the players in terms of getting on with them personally and understanding their personalities. I think Jason Cummings falls under that bracket. I think he possibly needs a bit of guidance from the rumours I've heard this week. Just a bit of guidance in life. I won't repeat them, but he was on the bench this week. Maybe that was just to give him a rest. But I think a player like Cummins, I think is no, maybe not his ego, but his feelings need to be managed. If he's going to be dropped from the team, he's going to need to, because he could be a really key player, especially in games like the derby that's coming up, and the game against Rangers, which he would highlight as well. One headache I think that Stubbs has got, or one that I've been considering, is what he does with Liam Craig now, because that was something I meant to mention last week. I thought against Rangers there was a spell where I was thinking we could really do with Liam Craig at the minute, and it seems a little contrarian to say, because a lot of Hibs fans thought that we should be dropping him, and he's still not quite won the fans round after last year. But the problem there is I don't think that he automatically slots back into the captaincy role. I think Fontaine and Gray are more than capable of holding on to that, and I think Craig's personality just didn't quite fit in with the role of captain. But in these games against Rangers, when we were being pushed against Rangers, that kind of calming influence in the middle of the park was kind of missed, as well as the things that he gets criticised for, such as always shouting at the referee, always moaning and stuff. That can be actually quite useful when Rangers are employing their sort of hatchet men tactics, which I don't anticipate the game at Easter Road next month being any different to the game last week. I think that Rangers are really going to push, so someone like Liam Craig might be quite important for that game.
Okay, but obviously, as you say with Craig, you wouldn't necessarily want him dropped in cold into that game, so you would then need to get him some time prior to then.
We do have 3 games coming up before then, so and as I said, they're against the bottom 3 teams. So I think maybe the Cow and Beast game. I mean, I don't know. He's not exactly been dropped, so to speak, because he was suspended this weekend. So the intention may have been to put him back in the team as soon as possible. I'm not sure what Stubbs has got in mind for that, but. It would be good to give him a little run of play because I think he can be quite useful when we are sort of in midfield struggling, especially if we're playing that sort of 3-5-2 again. He's quite a useful part of that. More so than in the diamond.
It's a fascinating point that you raised, that the fact that you've got the bottom 3 coming up, and of course sandwiched in between those games you've got lower league opposition in Berwick Rangers, and a massively important game in the Scottish Cup, but still a game that you would expect Hibs to comfortably win. With that in mind, Mikey, how do you, if you were Alan Stubbs at this moment in time, how would you be looking to manage the striking options over those 4 games? Do you go with a partnership and try and let them gel, or do you rotate the guys in and out to try and spread the goals out throughout the strike force?
I think that personally I would want to continue playing 2 guys that are playing just now. Malonga strikes me as the kind of player who doesn't flourish when he's taken out of it. I think he needs to be playing regularly to retain his sharpness, and JJ, he needs to play to get sharpness. He's come in having not played for a while, plus we're trying to build quite a good partnership into him, so I'd be quite comfortable and happy seeing them continue to start matches, and then using Cummins, Boyle as well, to come onto matches and try and change things up a little bit, because both of those 2 players are completely different in style to the 2 starters. But I would certainly be quite confident and happy in those 2 guys continuing to play. I think also throughout the team there's not a lot of guys who have played all the games this season. People have had spells of injury or suspension, or they've joined us later in the season, whether it be after the first or the second transfer windows, so I don't think there's too high a mileage in the legs of a lot of the players, but I would certainly, in terms of the strikers, I certainly like to see them continue to play just now. You can sort of worry about a hatchet job getting done, but that could happen in any match, so I think you want to get the guys, especially in the striking positions, just on fire.
Connor, a point that Mikey's touched on a bit there, and that you brought up beforehand, is that Hibs squad has almost been naturally rotated for Stubbs this year, because you've had different players going out with injuries at different stages of the season, and it's managed the squad that way. With the playoffs coming up, Stubbs will have some responsibility to try and actively manage players who are maybe a little bit more susceptible to injuries. That's the last real case where rotation would be called upon. Are there any players that you would pinpoint as being real concerns that they may pick up injuries prior to the playoffs, and you simply can't afford for that to happen? You need them for that final run, and how would you manage those? I'm thinking, for example, a guy like David Gray, who we've already seen pick up an injury which could in theory reoccur. How would you manage a guy like that into the playoffs? Well, now that as I was saying earlier, Keith Watson seems to be a more than capable replacement for him, so I think the attitude that Stubbs had of easing Gray back into the team is perfectly sensible. I think there's no point in dumping him back in when we have a someone that can replace him almost like for like, because he is going to be important, especially just with his cool head towards the end of the season. Another player which I suspect could either pick up an injury or a suspension is McGeoch, and he's a vital part of the team just now, in terms of just his work rate and his drive, and he's somebody that it may be worth, for a couple of these games that we can more or less say that Hibs are expected to win now. We were making hard work of them early in the new year, but you would think that everyone from Wraith and below we should be okay with now. So McGeoch's one, and the other, I guess, maybe Scott Allen as well, because he seems to be prone to sort of occasional, illness or twinges. We have more than enough cover on that part of the field just now, so there's no point in wearing him out before the end of the year when we really might need him, and he does seem to rise to the occasion in big games. Okay, interesting. That rounds us up on Hibs in this chat then. Hearts, from a squad rotation perspective, we're a wee bit more acclimatised to it now because it's been ongoing for basically as long as the season has. Robbie Neilson certainly does not seem to hugely value consistency in his team selection, certainly not in the attacking positions. He likes to bring an unpredictability and to rotate in and out on a regular basis. Sean, who do you see as being guys who we will likely see rotated more than the others?
I think over the coming weeks there will be an ongoing rotation between certainly Billy King and Sam Nicholson, their involvement in the team. Walker earlier in the season you would have factored into that, but the running form he's been on, you worry that if you take him out of the team for one game, does it maybe take a knock to his confidence? As Mikey touched on with Malonga there, I think Jamie Walker's fairly in the same mould, that if he's on the pitch, there's a better chance of him continuing that run of form. To be honest, with the big games coming up, as you've said, that was our last big test until Rangers and Hibs. Depending on the results between now and then, the league could be almost done and dusted by the time that those games come round. So I don't know how much it is managing the squad, and more it's just, well, who's the fittest players, who's the best team we can put out on this day. I don't think there's necessarily players we need to rest for those games. I know for me the biggest thing is keeping the back four fit, especially for those big games, especially if we come up against a Rangers team who are playing Manu-esque long ball football. Callum Patterson, Ali Mosturk, even Danny Wilson are massively important for winning those aerial battles. So that's the main one for me, keeping the back four fit. Obviously if we can get Mick Hattie back, get him involved, that takes a wee bit of the pressure off Adam Eckersley, although Adam Eckersley has shown himself to be the first choice. Getting McGee maybe some playing time as well to get his confidence back up. Definitely the right back position. I wouldn't be playing him at centre half at this moment in time, but if we can slightly rotate that, even if it's we get 2-0 up at half time, making that change at half time and giving a rest of the legs would be a good thing.
Okay, leading on from what Sean said there, Graham, I think he makes a good point when he says that ultimately, because Hearts aren't necessarily building to a crescendo of a playoff or anything, they're now just trying to win every game. It maybe does become more about what Neilson has done most of the time, which is simply work to get your best team for that week on the park. With that in mind, are there any games that you proactively look ahead to where you say we need that person at their peak for that game? Would you tailor the strike force or the wingers, for example, to a specific opposition?
Yeah, I was having a wee look at the fixtures before I came here, and
research, we like it.
Proper research. And the games that were standout games for me were the games at the end of March, beginning of April, where we've got Falkirk away, Queen of the South at Tynecastle, Hibs and Rangers away. I think they're four massive games, and I think they occur after the next two games we play. So I can certainly see some key players, certainly in the strike force. I can't really see Osman Sow managing these next two games. I think he might be set out in those games. I think certainly back to what Sean was saying about swapping Nicholson and King all around. I think that's important. I wouldn't dare drop Payardo, because we've seen what happens when we drop him. We lose. Same with Walker. I think those are the two players that I would have on the team sheet regardless.
Okay, so
not Alexander.
So do we see Zeefouk then as being the battering ram at the moment? Is he the guy that we think, because of his size and his shape, we'll put him in there, he can play against the smaller teams, he'll take all the knocks and still get up and carry on, and we'll manage So's availability just as and when he's at peak fitness, and we'll try and get him there for Hibs and Rangers?
I think so, yeah.
See, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think he's our go-to guy at the moment.
Zafig.
I look at his scoring record since he came in, and for someone who, when we looked at him previously, we're like, oh, he seems like a good link-up guy, but he's no really a prolific goal scorer. Well, he's came in and he's took the jersey and he's ran with it. So for me, someone else has to do something spectacular to take it off him at this moment in time, because I mean, we've seen it. He's just as we've said before, the chest hands. Just I'll take it here and I want to place it on this exact blade of grass. It's unreal, his control. And I mean, I was amazed that one of the Queen of the South players managed to take the ball off him fairly easily at the weekend, because it's the first time I've seen it. You're expecting Roman Reigns have to fly out of nowhere to spear the guy to get him off the ball. So sorry, random wrestling mention there, but yeah, so for me, he's another one who's one of the first names on the team sheet at this moment in time. And until So comes on and scores a goal and puts in a brilliant performance, he's definitely the ahead of So at this moment in time.
Okay, let's wrap up on Hearts rotation then, and let's go to a slightly different subject from Hibs, because Hibs I think we'll see them rotate the personnel a lot, but in the main, Stubbs is gone with one formation, and when required he's gone to 3-5-2, and that's been the only real obvious change. Nielsen seems to move pretty fluidly between 4 or 5 different formations. Is there a clear favourite for yourself, Graham? Is there a clear, one that you look at and you think this is fine that we're changing it and keeping opponents guessing, but in the big games I want us to play that?
Yeah, I quite like the fact where you can play 4-2-3-1, and you have the attacking players almost pressing the ball, trying to get the ball, trying so really desperately to get the ball and retain the possession. Once you lose possession, they're running up and they're trying to get it back as quickly as possible. So I think in terms of that formation, I think that formation is probably the best for us, because it allows for a midfield, the two holding midfielders to act as that engine, and when you don't have the ball, obviously you have to change the formation around, and I think it offers Hearts a degree of flexibility, that formation.
Sean, do you have a favourite that you would like to see, especially in the big games? As we say, just now, them could be the title deciders. Could be the games where the league is won if the games leading up to that play out is the formalities that I think a lot of people expect them to be. Certainly, the next 3 games, we would expect Hearts to win, and then set up, that the idea of when is the league title won. If it's Rangers at Ibrox to win it, or Hibs at Easter Road to win it, what formation do you want to see played?
I kind of agree with the formation just stated there. The problem is how I see it in my head is not how it goes on the pitch. Basically, I think if you're playing that formation, it has to be Gallardo and Gomes as the 2. Buabin doesn't necessarily work as that one in behind the striker, as we've seen at points in this season. Buabin's best when he can drop deeper than Gomes or go ahead of him, but he's got that freedom to the position when he's out and out up there playing as the 10 off the striker. He's seemed a bit lost at moments in time, and also he's been frustrating when he beats a couple of men and he gets through and it's just like, right, take the shot now. Right, now take the shot. You've beat the man again, and it's really a reluctance to get a shot away, which you never saw earlier in the season. So I think Buabin, when he's fit, is always going to play. So I don't think that's necessarily the best formation for us. I think the 4-3-3 we saw, or working into a 4-5-1 from a defensive position, is the best thing to go with at the moment. However, I do like the two strikers up top, especially if we can get Keaton's back in a running form. That's the problem we've got just now. Is the reason we've tried so many different formations is it depends on who's in form at that moment in time. If someone's flying but that formation doesn't necessarily fit them, well, of course you're going to change the formation and try and keep them going with it. So we've seen quite a lot of them work this season. There's not necessarily one I gravitate towards. I would like to try the 4-2-3-1 at the moment with Kenny Anderson playing in behind, but I'm happy with a lot of the formations that are there. There's no specific one that I say that's our formation, go with that. If it's not working, change it, but that's our formation.
It's interesting. It shows you that football is indeed all about opinions, because I wouldn't go with any of the formations that you've listed. Mine would be like similar to the Hibs formation that we said before. I think when we played the 4-3-1-2, I think it worked. Getting the two strikers out there allows Keating's to play. I think he at least needs to play against some of the lower teams, because his movement does cause them problems. That's the one that I would go to for now, at least, and see how it's working, because it does also allow Walker to play in that 10 and do what's best. And then if he starts to struggle, then you've got Kenny Anderson to come in there, but it gets Buabin back in his natural position. It gets him closer to Gomez, where they can bounce off each other, but it also allows Payardo to sit deep. I think from a Hearts perspective, I would like to see him go with that, but as we say, it's all about opinions. Ultimately, all that matters is that Robbie Neilson and Alan Stubbs' opinions are validated and proven to be right on the Saturday. Hopefully we will see that again this Saturday. We'll see a continuation of both clubs on their winning ways. All that remains to be said is thank you for joining me, guys.
Thank you for having us.
And we will hear from you again next week, we hope. Thank you for listening out there. Again, we hope you listen next week. If you want to get in touch with us, get in touch at facebook.com/Monday Night Football, FITBA, or at MN Fitba on Twitter. If you want to follow in Graham's footsteps here and join us on the panel, then let us know. Otherwise, if you've got something you would like to hear us discuss, then simply give us a shout and we will do our best. Thank you for listening to Monday Night Football. Stay tuned for a night of music on Radio Saltire. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.